So
other people trickle in as we go.
Sure. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Anita.
Absolutely. My name is Anita Kuno, and the name of my talk is GNOME Outreach Program for Women, My Experience. So starting off, who am I? So my Twitter handle and my IRC nick are the same, and I pronounce it Antea. And that's my email address. I work with HP, and I work upstream with OpenStack. Does anybody know what OpenStack is? Yes? Oh, okay, great, some awareness. Lovely. So that's what I do and who I am. I'm a self-taught developer. I work remotely from home, and everything I've learned from home. So I live 2.5 hours drive north of Toronto, Ontario in Canada. And that was my base where I learned what I learned from home. The different things that I did in order to learn, I went to user group meetings, I attended conferences, I volunteered to help at conferences. There's some people when they're getting started, they may not have the resources in order to go and actually pay the fees to attend a conference, but one option is always to volunteer, because most conferences need lots of people to organize and help with signage and registration and so on. So that's always an option if somebody wants to gain some experience and get their foot in the door. Speaking at conferences, there's all different sizes of conferences, and so it's always an option to get your foot in the door and to get out there and to start talking and exercise your own voice. And then you find out who you are, and other people find out what you're all about. As well as taking online courses. And one of the things that I did was I made audio recordings for an organization called Ruby Learning, and they were based out of India. And so I took the online course, and I also noticed that they had a need to fill, and one of the things that I did was I made audio recording tools for this particular group. And one of the things that I got from that was I actually had to speak code. So one of the things that's helpful for learning code is that if you actually have to say it out loud, and you say what something is and the function name and so on, if you're actually speaking it, then you're forced to ask questions, what does this mean? And so that was something that was helpful for me to do. I also ran an online pair programming group. So the particular organization that I was in, it was a different group. And pair programming was very important, and we were all working remotely. So through email, I coordinated the organization of people working together, and so we worked with Skype, and we did pair programming, and it was also very, very good for meeting different people. So we had about 20 different people, and so the commitment was 1 hour per week that you would make yourself available to pair with the other person, coordinate the schedule, and then actually have a session. And that actually was very popular and worked out very well for creating some glue in the group itself. My work prior to the internship with the GNOME Outreach Program for Women, I did contract work with Ruby and Rails. I did content production. I have done work as a writer, and so I did content production for that. I also did some front-end work, CSS and HTML, as well as some deployment with an old Rails app. We had to put it on a new server and update it and so on. So I did some of that work while I was also doing other non-technical related work in order to be able to continue to live where I wanted to live and give myself the flexibility to continue learning at home. I heard about the internship with the GNOME Outreach Program for Women on Twitter. And I was very clear from the beginning what my goal was. And my goal for doing the internship was to get a job. By the end of the internship, I wanted to be paid to do the work that I was doing. And that was something that I was very, very clear in my mind. And every person that I spoke to when I was investigating the internship, I shared that goal with them. And I looked for the people who were willing to hear that and be supportive of that goal. I selected OpenStack. The first thing that appealed to me was the documentation with OpenStack. When I went to the website, I found that it was very, very clear in terms of its presentation. So that was a very, very good first impression. And then the second thing was the people that I met. I really, really enjoyed talking to them. I liked their approach. I liked the way that I was encouraged to ask questions, and they also asked questions of me. I met other people involved with GNOME Outreach Program for Women and in the channel on irc.gimp.net. So I spent some time in there, again, telling people what my goal was for the internship and then meeting various people in that channel. Oops. It was in the channel that I met my mentor, the person who would be my mentor in the program, and her name is Isha Sethe. She is an OpenStack developer. She works on the Glance project as well as Nova, and she works out of Virginia, and she works with Rackspace. And she had identified herself as a mentor and was looking for somebody to work with, and we hit it off very, very well. And I was very grateful that she was willing to be my mentor. Making my first commit, part of the GNOME Outreach Program for Women application process is that I don't just talk about how wonderful I am or give a song and dance about what I'm going to do. I have to actually demonstrate my ability to do it. And they require that people make a commit to the code base. And it doesn't have to be a challenging commit. You just have to demonstrate that you're willing to go through the process to learn the steps necessary for that organization in order to make a commit. So I made my first commit with Isha walking me through the whole process. I filled out my application. That actually took probably about 3 or 4 days because I would go through a round of filling it out. I would get feedback from my mentor. We would discuss it, and then I would do another round of filling out my application. I also made a second commit because there were 3 positions in the program for OpenStack, and there was only 1 or 2 of us applying. So I also made a second commit with a different project than the one I ended up working on, but that was a valuable experience as well because then I got to see what their process was like, and it was a bit different than the first process that I had gone through. But I did make that second commit also to give myself options, so that in the selection process, if I didn't get my first choice, then I would have my second choice as an option. I also decided that I wanted to do an internship with other people. So it ended up that about 3 days before the end of the deadline, there was just me available for 3 positions. And at that point, it was a year ago and a bit, and OpenStack was not as well known as it is now. And there were, I remember one of the programs, Wikimedia is much more well known, and they had, I think they had something like a dozen applicants for about 5 positions. So I talked to different people about steering them over to us, and kind of went out and recruited various people and found 2 other people, helped them get through the process, and they were able to put forward an application as well. Because one of the things that was important for me was that I had a peer group to work with as an intern. The GNOME Outreach Program for Women. So I've talked a little bit about myself and a little bit about my background and how I got started. Who knows what that is? Oh, good. Yay. All right. Just to recap then, the GNOME Outreach Program for Women offers paid internships. They're not, the payment is considered a stipend, and it basically is enough money for gas and groceries so that you don't have to go out and find a second job, something to distract yourself so that you can eat, but you actually have enough money so that you can get by and actually focus on the work that's right in front of you, which I think is extremely valuable because then the work that you're doing is an actual reflection of what you're capable of doing if you were doing this full-time as a job, rather than feeling that you have to do something and then do something else. But still have that level of focus as if you were working full-time. So I think that's really important, that there is some form of compensation so that people are freed up to focus on the work that's in front of them. A bit of the history, and I know that Karen is going to talk about this more. She has a talk tomorrow about this. But basically, my understanding is that GNOME recognized that they needed to have more gender parity in the representation of who was working on open source projects. And so they took it upon themselves to do something internally about that. And they went with the internships, which actually were beneficial in terms of having more women at conferences and more women contribute to open source. And then they opened it up to other companies. So when I was involved, which was a year ago now, was the first time that they actually opened it up to other companies. Is that accurate? Okay. That they opened it up to other companies. And when I participated, I believe there was 10 other companies, and I think there was about 18 positions over those 10 companies. Some companies had one position, and I think Wikimedia ended up with 5 positions. There were 3 positions at OpenStack. So every company was different in terms of how many interns that they could support. So going back to my process, so after I submitted my application, I had to go through, there was the period of waiting for approval, and then there was going to be a period of time before the actual internship started. During that period of time, I was setting up my development environment. OpenStack uses a tool called DevStack to set up a development environment, and it took me many, many times to configure that. So I basically spent 3 weeks just continually setting up DevStacks so that I had a development environment to work with. What that did was that enabled me to really understand what other people who are new to OpenStack, what they have to deal with, and also to be able to help them when they're dealing with various problems. Common errors of passwords or not working or something like that. So then I spent some time just working with DevStack and understanding it. My internship, when it started, so I did work for about 3 weeks just setting up my DevStack, and then the internship started. The internship was 12 weeks long, and mine was basically split up. In my mind, there was two definite halves to it. So the first half of the internship, I worked with 2 projects. One is called Glance, and that's an image service project, and the other is Nova, which it's called Compute, and basically it deals with hypervisors to spin up nodes to have them available for you. And so I was working on identifying bugs in my when I was setting up DevStack myself, as well as going through bugs and selecting individual bugs that I was working on. Part of the internship, I had to write blog posts. I aimed for a weekly blog post, and the way that I worked, I basically had to take a day in order to compose it and write it. Everybody's different about how they approach blog posts, and in terms of that, my only advice is figure out what works best for you and do that. And the way that I had to do it was I basically had to select a day, and that was my blog posting day. And I would write down a bunch of ideas on a piece of paper and then go for a really long walk. And then by the time I got back, I would have a sense of what I wanted to say about those ideas and how I wanted to express them. That actually ended up working well, and the biggest thing for my blog was that I was able to write consistent blog posts. When I got started, this was the first time that OpenStack had participated in the GNOME Outreach Program for Women, and there was no IRC channel established for OpenStack and the Outreach Program for Women, so I created one. The official outreach program for women channel is on the GIMP server, and OpenStack works off of the Freenode server. So all of the OpenStack channels are on Freenode. So I created one on the Freenode server. And if you would like to join, you're more than welcome. And that's OpenStack-OPW. So that channel is still in existence. And the motivation for the channel was a gathering place for people to get together, the other interns to talk, and the mentors and so on. And that actually ended up working very well because I gathered a bigger group of people and convinced other people who weren't direct mentors to come in and to participate in the channel and to be available for questions. And that actually sparked a number of very good conversations. So I did that. I convinced people to come into the channel and participate. One of the things that I did was that I got involved in the community by helping out with the election process. OpenStack has elections every release or just before the summit for a new release. And I wanted to get involved with that. I'd been monitoring the meeting channel. And I saw that this discussion was coming up about having to do that. And so I listened to the meetings for the technical committee. There's a meeting channel, OpenStack-meeting. You're more than welcome. And I saw that the elections were being discussed. I recognized that I had something to offer this process, and so I just jumped in. I decided to help with the election. And the person who had to run that election at that time, his nickname is Mordred, and his name is Monty. And I decided to introduce myself. And oh my goodness, I haven't even gotten through half of it. Anyway. Okay. Okay, I'll try to speed up here. So I introduced myself to Monty and I told him that I wanted to help participate in the elections. I didn't really do a whole lot, but just reaching out to him, finding him, telling him that I wanted to participate, that was enough in order to start a conversation, and that led to further conversations with this person. So the second half of the internship basically was marked with code freeze. We have 2 releases in a year, so a 6-month release cycle. And so we have 3 milestones, and then we have a code freeze, and then we have about 4 to 6 weeks when the code is frozen, and then we fix bugs ready for the release. So during code freeze, all of the people who had been available to mentor basically disappeared because they needed to get their patches in. And so when I had a problem with my own work, I had nobody available to talk to me because they were all working to get their things done. And so that, I had the loss of conversation with mentors and the whole mentor group. They were still available, but they just didn't have any time to talk to me. And Ann Gentle, who is the organizer for the OpenStack GNOME Outreach Program for Women component, she had introduced me to the OpenStack Infra channel earlier, which is the infrastructure team, and they run all of the servers that run all of the testing, and they also run all of the testing tools for all of OpenStack. That's a different talk. In any case, she introduced me to that channel, and I had been lurking in that channel, and I noticed that they needed help, so they were there, so I just offered to help them. And I negotiated a section of time with my mentor, so I was allowed to stay for 2 weeks in infra. And basically, now that I look at it, they spent more time helping me than I actually was effective. You know, I was just kind of a body bouncing around. But they tolerated me, and they put up with me. And they never had anybody in that kind of position before, so me introducing it to them was kind of a new idea for them. But they went with it, and I had a great 2 weeks. And then I said, thanks, I'm done. I have to go back to the work that I was doing before because code freeze was off now. And they said that they wanted me to stay, which was nice to hear. So if I was working at doing an internship, being told that people wanted me to hang around was good news. Because I wanted a job, that was my focus. During the second part, I focused on resumes and interviews. So I got my resume updated, I got feedback on my resume, I made some contacts and got some interviews. went through the process, and I did end up getting a job offer. And it was a process to make the decision to accept the offer, but I did accept the offer. And then that was the end of the internship, but it was still a continuation of the process, because for me, the internship was a jumping off point to other things. So the Portland Summit was after the internship official, but it was still part of our process. The foundation, the OpenStack Foundation, paid for flights and accommodation for myself and the other 2 interns. So 3 interns, they made sure that we all got to the summit, which was very generous on the part of the foundation. And the people who helped us to get there. So that was wonderful to be at the summit. I got to meet Isha for the first time. I did an interview for theCUBE. I don't know if you know theCUBE at all. They have a website, and they also do a broadcasted video television show on the internet, and they have a YouTube channel. And so I did an interview for theCUBE about the GNOME outreach program for women. And it was fun to be able to meet the people and participate in the design sessions, and I found that the design conversations had the same kind of dynamic as conversations in IRC. My blog is at entea.info. I'm going to stop here because I have some other things as well, but that it's mostly just about me personally, but that kind of ties up what my experience was with the GNOME outreach program for women internship. Are there any questions? Go ahead?
Back at the beginning of the process and setting up your development environment, how could you expand upon how that was for you? And particularly, do you find at that point you kind of wanted to pack it in?
Okay, just for the video. The question was, can I expand on my experience with the development environment, and how did I feel about that? Did I go through a period of time where I wanted to pack it in? And my personal experience was I had gone through so many experiences before because I had been working remotely and moving from Windows to Linux on my own at home via email and long periods of time working on something and then finally getting an answer. It was very frustrating, but I had gone through this period of frustration before, so there was no idea that floated through my mind to say I want to give up. So me personally, no. If somebody had had experiences of working with other people before and then all of a sudden had this thrown at them, it's a possibility that they might have. But personally, I did not.
Perhaps then to follow up on that, how do you think, obviously you're talking in terms of OpenStack, but how do you think communities could improve this kind of bootstrapping process? I guess let me give you some context. My feeling from my time as a mentor, a lot of potential candidates got very disheartened at getting to the point where they could actually build the product and hack code. So they were perfectly fine programmers, but in terms of getting all the little bits in place to start being able to write code, found that quite difficult. So how do you feel it could be improved, if you have any opinions?
Okay. Question was the context is that the experience is that a lot of potential candidates have the intelligence, they've got the ability, but the actual process of having to set up a development environment can sometimes be so difficult and so frustrating that is a turning point for some people, and they're not able to move forward with the process. And do I have any suggestions for how various communities can approach this? And I don't have anything quick off the top of my head to say. The one thing I will say is that my personal experience is that I've had many frustrating experiences in my life. 5 minutes, thank you. Tree planting is one. Where you really for weeks you make no progress. There was 5 days where I planted 125 trees per day. I was owing the company for the privilege of planting trees all day. And it was just so disheartening and so frustrating. But I knew, I was young, but I was not going to quit. And within 3 weeks, I was making decent money. And by the end, I was making really, really good money. And I didn't learn the process until I put the time in. And I don't know if it's a matter of selecting candidates who have had, personally, one of the if I'm interviewing somebody to do we want to work together, one of the questions I ask people is tell me an experience in which you failed and what did you do about it. I'm not digging for personal information, I'm digging for tell me about how you failed. Because if somebody thinks they can succeed in any field, and actually achieve their goals and not experience failure, then they're kidding themselves. Because the only way to continue is to experience failure and then stand back up and learn your lessons and do it again and then fall down and then learn your lessons and stand back up. And I don't know, maybe actually look for that as a personality or characteristic. I'm not sure. And yeah, so I guess that's all I've got on that one, because I don't really have any specific thing to say, offer them this or offer them that. Because at a certain point, you have to find the people that are going to be so determined that anybody who puts up a wall in front of them, they're going to either climb it, knock it down, tunnel underneath it, walk around it, or outweight the wall until it falls down. That's all I got. Okay. Did anybody have anything else? Does anybody else have anything else? Okay. I was going to try to be over by 2, right? What do we?
We've got about 2 minutes by my watch.
2 minutes?
Yeah, I guess then so far, I'm going to say final part to this is my fear as a mentor specifically for women is that in our world that we live in, women are frequently told that they can't do it, that they're not good enough, that you're stupid, rada.
Yep. And I've heard all those as well.
Sure. And my fear with that initial kind of onboarding for our communities is the bar has gotten so high.
Yes, it has.
And even compared to when I started, the bar has gotten so high.
Yes.
To get these things running. That combined with you're stupid, kind of combines with, well, maybe I can't do it then.
Presumably you can package up the environmental tools. I mean, a lot of
And
home directory, someone zips something, you go, well, here's a script, run this, it'll adjust it for your home directory and just set up to it. Because I agree with you, it's a huge problem, the whole setup.
Yeah.
You know how to do something, but you can't get to that point where you're actually able to do something.
And it's interesting because it took me 3 weeks. And then Liz and I and Ryan Lane, we did a presentation, and we had 3 hours and 50 people. And to set up a DevStack environment, that was our goal. We thought, okay, it's going to take us all 3 hours, and because it's just so tough. We had it down that we were done in, half an hour? We created an image and we had our instructions all out. We had every
single person in the room with a working dev stack in half an hour, and we were so surprised we didn't know what to do next. Because the feedback was we didn't do anything. But by our minds, it's just like we took 3 weeks of work and we packed it into half an hour for every single person in the room. We had a 100% success rate for that. So by our standards, we had a huge success, but the participants thought, well, we didn't do anything. We didn't spin anything up, we didn't do anything fancy. So I understand where you're coming from, and yes, packaging is definitely a direction to go. We are getting better at packaging in our own project, and I think projects mature and get better at packaging. But I think the larger problem here, and the thing that I considered larger, is what do you do with failure? Because one of the things that I see in my job and what I look for is I'm allowed to fail. And I pick people to work with where it's okay if I fail and it's okay if they fail. I can try something and fail, and I still have my place in the group. And I think that it's important to find places, because there are places where that's allowed, to find that and have that, and simply by having that and fostering that and recognizing then that's what it is. To be in a position where you have permission to fail and get up and try again, and you're not excluded for that. And I think that's larger than a software construct. I think that's a societal or a group expectation. And I think that's something to work towards larger. I think there are pockets of it. And I think that recognizing that and working with those places where there's pockets can expand that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lana. I appreciate it. Thank you.